All right, so welcome everyone to the Wildwood Public Safety meeting. We're going to start off with the roll call. So please take it away with that.
City Marshal Jeff Bader.
Hey, I'm here.
Board Member Chris Preston. Wait, do I? No. Okay. Oh, well, I see him there. I see a screen. I just didn't hear. So. Alrighty, we will move on. Board Member Kevin Gleason.
Here.
And Board Member Vince Loyal.
Here.
Thank you. And last but not least, looks like Council Member Liaison Ed Marshall.
Mr. Marshall had indicated he wasn't able to attend tonight.
Okay, got it.
I'm sorry. I had to switch my thing around here.
All right, so I got you down as present as well now. I think that's it for the roll call.
All right, first item of business is the approval of the minutes from December 12th, 2023. I assume that most members have had a chance to review those minutes. Do I hear a motion to approve?
I have a comment, Mr. Chairman.
A second?
Mr. Marshall.
I'm sorry, did you say you had a comment?
Yeah, I believe that Assistant Chief John Bradley was present for that meeting. He wasn't indicated his presence in the minutes.
All right, well, I'm going to apologize. I need you to repeat that. So,
Well, the minutes indicate that John Bradley, Assistant Chief of Metro West, was not present. And I distinctly remember that he was present at that meeting in December.
all right, can we change the minutes to reflect the fact that John Bradley was present at the meeting?
Yes.
All right. So if we can do that, so when we approve when we adjust those minutes, do I have a motion to approve them?
Motion to approve.
I'll second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? No approval from the December 7th, 2023 minutes have been approved. All right, next item of business is the public comment. Do we have any public comments?
This time, Marshal Bader, let me take a look. I do not see any hands raised. We have one attendee, which is Councilmember Clark. I do not see her hand at this moment, but we do have Mr. Bradley here that has his hand raised.
All right, so it's all right. So we have a public comment. Let's hear it. So,
can you guys hear me?
Yes, very well.
Okay. Sorry about that. I had talked to Rick earlier this week. Lots of things are changing in our organization, and I've been on this committee, whether it's been as a citizen voting or a liaison from public safety for over 11 years now, and I appreciate my time on here. But I think it's time for Joe Hafer, who's our assistant fire marshal, battalion chief, to take my role if that's okay as a liaison. I didn't know the process for that. I didn't want to just pass the baton without any kind of permission from the board. So I talked to Rick about it, and I'm assuming this is going to be okay for us just to switch roles.
Yeah, and I don't, personally, I don't have a problem with it, but I'm going to rely on Mr. Brown to tell us what we need, the process that we need to do to make this happen.
Mr. Marshall, I'm not aware of any formal process that needs to occur. We can double check that. The board's membership is in the code. And basically we have the 5 members. Metro West is basically represented as a gesture of goodwill. They're not an official member of the Board of Public Safety. They are liaison to you all as the board members. So we appreciate their attendance, I think, and they provide valuable insight and feedback to the board, generally speaking. But I think it might be up to you guys for this to occur, and I would assume that you would be in favor of this.
So I just wanted to make sure that I'm clear on this before we move on. There's nothing prohibiting John from stepping down and Joe taking over in his place.
Not to my knowledge, they're strictly voluntary and they are attending to provide the perspective of Metro West and to assist the board in your efforts.
All right. So and I don't want to put anybody on the spot, and if we need to go offline with this, with the discussion, we can. But does anybody on the board feel that there's a need to discuss this further?
Mr. Loyal's got his hand raised. Marshall?
Go ahead, sir. Please speak.
Yes, I've had the good fortune of working with Assistant Chief Bradley and also Battalion Chief Joe Hafer for many, many years. And it will be a tremendous loss to this board for John to step away, but I certainly understand and thank him for his service. Joe joining the board will, continue the strong presence that Metro West has, and will continue the outstanding contribution that they make to Wildwood's Board of Public Safety. So John, thank you very much, and Joe, welcome.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Vince, and Vince, you've always been very honest with the group, so I'm going to take that as an endorsement of Joe to take over for John.
Yeah, I think John has earned his opportunity to step away, and Joe will do a great job stepping in.
Well, I appreciate the commentary because that makes it very easy. Because if anybody wants to have an opposing view, Vince stands up and he says what he thinks. Okay, and the board respects that opinion. Okay, and so I would challenge anybody that thinks that Vince is wrong to stand up now and speak their piece. Well, Joe, it sounds. I'm sorry, John. We wish you best of luck. And we thank you for everything you have done. And it sounds like, Joe, you get to talk to us every other month. So
Sounds good. Hopefully I can bring some valuable information when asked.
Well, I think if you talk to John, and if you ever need advice, talk to Vince. Okay. Vince does not hesitate to tell us what he thinks. Okay. And I appreciate, Vince, you taking the time to tell us your thoughts on this. And John, I appreciate everything you've done for the board. And Joe, welcome to our fun. So, all right. Sounds like Joe Hafner is now our new member of the board. So next item of business appears to be, I guess, first of all, we have no more public comments, correct?
Sounds correct.
Sorry about that. I was on. Yep, that is correct. No one else has the raised hand feature up right now. Thank you.
That's okay. I mean, we're all dealing with, a Teams meet or a Zoom meeting, after we've been in person for a while. So it's going to be a little rough at times. All right. The informational part of this, I see on the agenda that we have no items for information unless somebody is willing to correct me on that. All right, moving on. Old business, Lafayette High School, on-street student pickup concerns. I think we may have some information on that regarding an update regarding that situation. Yep.
Mr. Marshall, yes, I've tried to provide the board some information to kind of recap where we're at. This item, of course, has been in front of you before. I think it was in front of you at the last meeting, and at that time, we discussed the issue of the parent pickup that is still occurring, unfortunately. As you recall, previously the board addressed this concern. We installed signage on West Glen Farms Drive, kind of off of Clayton Road, east of the high school. No standing or stopping signs were installed in that neighborhood, and we also installed some signage to the north of the high school in Dartmouth subdivision as well. After that occurred, we've seen additional, thank you very much, additional occurrences of this happening to the south of the high school now in the West Glen Farms, on Babbler View Drive, south of Lafayette High School. We've seen this occurring now, as we discussed previously. I think after the last meeting, we were kind of tasked with a few items. One was to meet with Lafayette High School. And Captain Mundell was kind enough to set up a meeting that we held with them last week. at Lafayette with the principal and their key staff that are involved in dealing with their student arrival and dismissal at the high school. So that meeting, I think, was very, very helpful. And I was personally very satisfied with the response from Lafayette. They did have all their key folks at that meeting. Captain and I attended from on the city's behalf. And I think they've got some good feedback from us relative to the scope of the problem and the concern that we are trying our best to address. And I think they got the sense from us, the magnitude of the problem, and are aware that it's in front of you all as the Board of Public Safety. So I think it was a very good meeting. They are certainly committed to doing anything they can to help alleviate the concern and to further communicate with parents, not to pick up off-site, but to follow their procedures. At least that was my take from the meeting. I think secondly, I feel after the meeting, in talking with them, it's very apparent that they have a very good handle on the arrival and dismissal periods and are very organized in that regard. And I think they're doing a fine job handling students during those periods of time. So I think there's no doubt that they're very confident in what they do and they know exactly what needs to happen. And it does occur very efficiently and safely overall. So I don't feel like it's not being handled. At least that's my perspective. And I think Captain would agree. Captain, do you have anything you want to add further with regard to the meeting that we held?
No, it went very well. They were very receptive to and understanding what we're facing, and obviously they can't control what the parents are doing, but they have committed to continually repeat the message.
Well, and I could be wrong at this point, but I think as long as the city of Wildwood has an ongoing conversation with Lafayette High School, before we take any other measures that, change a bunch of stuff, so to speak, let's just let City of Wildwood, the Wildwood Precinct and Lafayette High School work through these problems would be my suggestion.
If I may, Marshall, I had a couple other comments I wanted to make, if that's okay.
Sure. You have the floor.
Thank you. So, a couple other points I wanted to make relative to the issue. Captain was also kind enough to arrange to have some drone footage captured of both the morning and the afternoon periods. And so we have some new drone footage. Actually, we have some older drone footage that we had taken of Lafayette as well that was good data. So I was able to review it. I'm sure Captain took a look at it, but using the drone footage is extremely helpful to view the procedures at hand during the arrival period and the dismissal period as well. And I think that further solidifies in my mind after watching that footage that they are pretty well doing everything they can to handle traffic in both those periods. I don't see any obvious glaring deficiencies or things that could be implemented to improve the traffic flow after viewing the drone video footage that Captain was able to obtain for the morning and the afternoon. And I assume the Captain would concur with that. I think it's being handled quite well. Even if there are some minor things that could be implemented, it's certainly not going to change things drastically at this point, or affect, I think, unfortunately, the parents' perceptions of how traffic is handled on site. So I think my takeaway is that it's largely a problem of the parents who have the perception that they can game the system, if you want to put it that way, pick up off-site and potentially save a few seconds to a minute doing that. I think if you ask the Lafayette staff, they don't believe they're really saving any time, frankly, because the traffic on site flows quite well. It's just a perception on the part of the parents that they are saving time and they think it's a better approach potentially. So I guess that's the downside. I don't have a magic bullet that we can implement to address the traffic flow in and out of the school in the morning and the afternoon. I think it's being handled quite well. Now, the next thing I wanted to bring up was I did provide you essentially a recommendation. Thank you very much, Mr. City Administrator, for you to consider tonight. And this is consistent, I think, with what we did over on West Glen Farms and in Dartmouth. So essentially, if you'd like to do this, we can implement the installation of the no standing and stopping signs there in those locations shown in yellow on Babbler View, Wine Garden Court, and then Paradise Peak, the loop north of Babbler View. Those roads, and those roads currently have no parking restrictions in place. So it's intended to discourage students from parking there during the day. So this restriction that's in place is no parking from 10 a.m. to 2 p.m. It doesn't affect the parents' desire to park, at 3:20 to pick up the kid. So if we installed in the areas shown in yellow, the no standing or stopping for those half hours in the morning and the afternoon, that would be consistent with the approach that we put in place over on West Glen Farms and across the road in Dartmouth. So that was the one thought. And then the second part of that recommendation is the area in red. So the area in red is the north side of Babbler View between Paradise Peak and 109. And there I'm suggesting maybe a little stronger approach and just a restriction from parking along that north side of the road because of the fact that that area is, the road is narrow, it's 26 feet in width, provides basically room for 3 lanes of traffic. If you have folks parking on both sides, you're going to get one car, in or out. So the thought was to restrict parking on the north side. That's the side of the road where there's no driveways. There are driveways on the south side, so if restricted on the north, we shouldn't be impacting the resident on that corner negatively. And by doing this, we feel that we could open up at least 2 lanes of traffic on that segment of the road at all times. That's the thought, because I know that it's fairly congested in the morning, in the afternoon, and in the school dismissal periods and arrival periods. So that's kind of the two prongs of the recommendation to you guys tonight, would be to implement those 2. And Captain, if you have thoughts to the contrary to implementing these, I know the restrictions, particularly the stopping and standing restriction, always has the potential to create more work for your officers. So if you feel strongly opposed to this, I think you can certainly express that opinion to the board now. I don't want to put you on the spot. I know we've gone back and forth on this, but
yeah, I know that area in red there on Babbler View, I think that's a necessity, just to ensure that traffic can get off of 109 and can also get out of the subdivision. Otherwise, it creates a bottleneck there that backs up out on the highway.
And we've talked about this area, Captain and I, and one thing I should probably point out too, and you probably can't tell this, but the reality is there isn't, by code, although it's not signed in this manner, you can already argue that a good portion of that block is restricted because they can't park legally within 30 feet of the intersection. And there's also, I believe, a fire hydrant there too. So from those two, for those 2 reasons, in large part, you really can't legally park on that block for most of it. So we're just kind of extending that and putting the signs up to more formally implement that restriction by doing this.
All right, we got a couple hands up. We're going to start with Vince, and then we'll go to Joe, which is now John, who used to be, anyway, to Joe. So start off,
I'm prepared to make a motion to support those recommendations, but I know that Councilmember Farmer's in attendance, and I would welcome any comments as his council district if he's in support of this or has concerns before I make that motion to support.
Thank you. I don't really have any concerns. I brought my daughter off and pick her up there every day. It is quite something to deal with, I can tell you.
Thank you. Well, then I would make a motion to support the recommendations as provided by Mr. Brown.
All right, let's hang on. We want to hear from, the old John Bradley, the new Joe Hafner. So,
I don't have anything to add. I think Chief Bradley's hand was up from a previous hand up.
all right. I think I saw Mr. Gleason's hand up.
Yeah, I just, a little clarification there, Rick. And maybe it's just because of there's like a heavy yellow line and a lighter yellow line. So I was just trying to make sure I understood. The proposed additional restrictions is everything yellow, correct?
That's correct. So it would be on both
Okay.
sides of the road, for that section of Babler View, Wine Garden, and Paradise Peak.
Okay. Paradise Peak had like a light yellow and then dark yellow, or there's like a wide line, narrow line. So I was just making sure I understood that correctly. Okay, that was my only question.
So the only thing I would throw in is I understand there's parking restrictions here regarding driveways and fire hydrants and everything else. And, people pull up and they're there for 20 minutes to pick up their kids or whatever. I get that. Are we comfortable that we don't need any additional signage in that area? Or Vince, what was the motion you were going to make?
I believe that Mr. Brown's recommendation is that there would be some additional signage into places where it's currently lacking. So I would support that. Is that right, Greg?
Yeah, and perhaps I should have clarified that, but yeah, with this recommendation is the understanding that we would install signs to implement these regulations. So there'd be no parking signs for the red area. And then probably the approach would be on the existing signposts that are out there that have the no parking 10 to 2 p.m. We would add the no standing or stopping sign on that post.
All right. So it sounds like you and Captain Mundell did a good job of, working with Lafayette High School on this. Vince, you still want to make your motion?
I do. I make the motion to support the recommendation by Rick Brown and staff to implement the changes to facilitate improved parking in Lafayette.
And I second that. I second that motion.
Anybody opposed? Motion carries. Mr. Brown, Captain Mundell, I'll assume you'll carry our recommendation forward to City Council. So
We will do that. Thank you very much.
all right, let me move on to the next item on the agenda. You never realize how dependent you become. Yeah, hang on. Kevin, is your hand up from a?
No, I had a different, separate question, and I'm just I'm going back in my memory, and I'm not totally clear. The existing no parking that the change we made on, and I don't know all the roads, I apologize, on Westland Farms. Did we officially approve that, or did we put those up temporarily to see? I can't remember. I thought we originally said, can we do that to see what happens? And we didn't necessarily pass that. I just wanted to make sure we did.
Mr. Brown, can you tell us on that what we did?
Well, I think if we didn't move forward with the ordinance, we need to probably bring that back officially and do it. I'm drawing a blank, to be honest.
Yeah, I thought our discussion was we could put some signs up without actually passing the ordinance to see what happened. And, I think this is what happened, but I don't remember us actually doing the ordinance or to make that change, which I do, make a motion that if it has not been done, that we do that for that officially.
That would be fine. And if that's the case, we will certainly add that to the restriction in this area if that works for the board.
I would second the motion.
Anybody opposed? Motion carries. So on our recommendation to the City Council on this.
Thank you.
All right, looking up the second item of business. I only have one screen tonight, so that causes me problems. Okay. Green Pines Elementary School on-street student pickup concerns. What do we have there for old business?
Is this something you want to handle, Thomas? I know,
I could jump in, but if you wanted to get it started off, but at this time, Green Pines is experiencing some of the similar issues. Well, completely different scenarios, but similar issues reported by some of the parents that have called the city regarding individuals that are parking on the roadways right adjacent to the actual schoolway. Captain Mundell and I think we have discussed this in a previous meeting. We actually, with Councilmember Farmer, we're out there at the beginning of the school year, and it seems like they have a decent system in place. People get in and out pretty quickly once the process gets moving, but there are some individuals that continue to park a little bit to the, I'd have to look at the map, but they are parking on the adjacent streetways that some residents and the trustee of the HOA has reached out to say that they are concerned that someone could get, a child could get hit or something along those lines. At this time, I actually drove over there. It was about 3 weeks ago during a typical school let out, and it was pretty much the same. Actually, probably a little bit less cars than what we had at the beginning of the school year, which should be expected just with the beginning of the school and no one really knowing what they're new to the school, dropping off their kids. But in this case, there might be a need to take a deeper dive into that area, but at this time, it has been relegated to about a couple or so complaints that have come in, but it does seem to be a similar issue to what is going on with Lafayette. Thank you. Rick, did you want to add to anything on that?
no, I haven't gotten the complaints. I know we have had a few come in, and it's obviously very similar, the issue with Lafayette that we've struggled with. And I think the same approach, if we desire to do it, we could start putting signs up. I don't know that we have signs around Green Pines at this point. We've generally tried to deal with it, dealing with the school district, directly at this point.
Yeah, I mean, so if I can weigh in here, I would just simply say that, this isn't something that developed this year. I mean, it's been in place for a long time. And I think Rick is right. I think we do a deeper dive and take a look at, what the actual impact is before we get too involved in what we're going to solve, if that makes sense.
And it does seem that Forest Leaf tends to be the street that gets brought up the most, so maybe that could be a good starting point to look there, but that might be a good spot to start.
Yeah, Vince, I see your hand up.
Yeah, can we do the same drone assessment that we did with Lafayette area to see if it's genuine or if it's just perceived concern?
Captain, can you pull those strings?
Yeah.
Wait, can we get the free drone again?
Yeah, I think we can do that.
Yeah. All right. Well, and So, and Kevin, you're up next. Okay. So
Yeah. And with that, I was just going to ask, I know it sounded like you had a very good meeting with Lafayette, with the principal and those involved. If that had happened with Green Pines also, and just, they have that ability, they're pushing communication out to the parents all the time to strong hint not to do that type thing. I didn't know if that had been done or could be done.
Yes. Yeah, the principal there is very receptive, doing what he can.
All right, so that sounds positive. So reference this item on the agenda, we're just gonna kind of push it down the road until we've had a chance to talk to Green Pines and see what, how much they're willing to help us on this, if that may, let's go that route.
Hey guys, I'm on my phone. Sorry, I can't find the raise my hand button.
Go ahead.
I just wanted to chime in a little bit. I have another daughter that is at Green Pines, so I have pretty frequent conversations with Paul Godwin, who's the principal over there, and the primary kind of crossing guards at the two corners. I would say that this year specifically, I think we've run into some exacerbated issues there because we've had a lot of utility work. So there's been a lot of big trucks and things that are blocking things up. There are a very definite, I would say, handful of parents that are, it doesn't really seem to matter how much communication they send out from the school. They're either assuming that they are not the person that is being spoken to, or just don't care that that's what they want. So I think the big issue where the school has gotten is, whether it's teachers or parents that are kind of stationed there to kind of more or less confront these parents that are parking in a genuinely pretty dangerous spot, is where they're at. And I think that there's a, hesitation to do that for a whole lot of reasons, but I think that they're kind of at a loss outside of doing that, on what to do, because the communication is weekly and sometimes daily to not park in these places. And it really falls on deaf ears.
Well, and you bring up some interesting points. If there's heavy construction going on in the area, that impacts everything. Okay.
Right.
So, and I agree with the communications piece. What we don't want is citizens confronting citizens.
Right.
That's why we have Captain Mundell and all of his team to address those issues. Okay. And I'm not saying that sarcastically, but let's
Right.
bring in people that are trained in de-escalation to handle these issues. So regarding Green Pines, is this an issue that we just kind of want to give Captain Mundell and Mr. Brown a chance to take a look at before we try to decide anything with it?
Yeah, I mean, I think, we certainly can. I really don't know that outside of, having an officer or somebody there to have these conversations, I don't even know that the signs will help. I don't, it's like probably 18 people that are doing this.
Well, and so I've lived in Wildwood, I don't know, I think it's 25 years now. And this problem at Green Pines and Lafayette has existed for 25 years.
Yep.
So I think it's very important that we, as a board, take our time to develop a solution versus spending, a hour and a half meeting to develop a 25-year-old issue.
Right.
So,
yeah, I think if that's why you guys want to do it, I think that's great. I know Paul will be receptive, but I'm, if it pushes things further, I've been up there with Tom and Captain Mundell. I've been up there on my own. Like it definitely seems like conversations with a specific number of people is probably the best solution. And I just don't know how to get to that point.
Well, and that's understandable. Captain Mundell, I assume you guys are aware of any conflict in that area?
So it's a fine line there. I mean, this is a school procedure of how they do pickups. These are public streets. Someone can park on a public street legally. So having the police make someone move is illegal on my part. So a lot of the safety issues are perceptions. And Rick and I have, struggled with this. You have a parent telling their kid, I want you to walk up the street. I want you to cross the street. Where you see my car, that's where you cross the street. Teaching a parent to be responsible is kind of a difficult thing, and is not necessarily what the police function is. But
right, I agree with you. And training humans is hard. Okay, and I'll be honest with you. I have full confidence that you and Mr. Brown and the city of Wildwood are very attuned to these issues and doing everything that you can do to resolve them. What I don't want to do is for the Board of Public Safety to suddenly jump into a problem that has existed for, as long as Green Pines and Lafayette and everywhere else has been there. Because if we tried to shove a solution down somebody's throat, that is probably going to result in bigger problems. My perspective is let Rick and his team, Jimmy and his team, or Captain Mundell and his team work together. And if they think there's something that this board needs to recommend to the board or the city council, they'll bring it to us and we'll take it to the city council. Kevin, got your hand up?
Yeah, you actually pretty much just said what I was going to say. That, just as we've done on this other, is to look at it and, you're observing it, Captain, you know what's going on there, is to say, you want to bring a recommendation to make a change. And then we look at that. I don't see us making changes without the recommendation of those that are observing that they're on the street.
Yeah, because there is nothing I've seen in my short time on the board that indicates to me that the city of Wildwood and the Wildwood Police Department, okay, don't have the capability to bring to this board the recommendation that we need to make to, city council. Okay, I mean, everything we've been involved in, they provided us with sage counsel. And I think if we're gonna look at Green Pines, let's give Rick and his team and Captain Mundell and his team time to come back to this board and tell us if we really need to get involved in this. So I will open the floor up for discussion on that. So if anybody, has anything that they want to add to that, please feel free to do so.
So maybe just one question then for Rick and Captain Mundell, because I know they have one up at Wildwood Middle School. Is there something that would prevent the folks at Green Pines from putting up like a daily notificate, like a little stand up sign that just says this isn't a pickup zone kind of a thing? They have that one up at Wildwood that's like, please don't block the driveway for the car shop or whatever it is that's right next to it. Is there something that prevents them from that?
No, and that's a good point. Okay, so Captain Mundell and Mr. Brown and their teams can take a look at that, and it's their signage that we need to put in place that prevents us from blocking the entrance to a firehouse or an entrance to some business. They can take a look at that, and that's a very valid point. If we need to put signage in place that says don't block this intersection, then let's take a look at that.
Well, so it's not the city, it's the school that put it up.
Well, and I understand that, but right now we're dealing with the Board of Public Safety. So, I'm going to ask, Mr. Brown and Captain Mundell to take a look at that area, work with the school, Green Pine, to see if there's an area that we need to address that can't be blocked.
I'll go by and take a look. I'm not familiar with that sign, but I'll go take a look, and if we can use it, then I'll suggest that also to the school.
Yeah, it's like right before you pull into Wildwood. I think it used to be a gas station. I don't know what it is now, but there's like a little kind of temporary like sandwich sign thing that they put up there every morning and afternoon.
Okay.
And the good news is we're dealing with the same school district. So if they did it at one location, they might be willing to do it at another.
No, I think they are willing. I just didn't know if, because it's a different, the neighborhood is different than kind of that big road over there on Pond. If there was a reason that they could not.
Yeah, and I'll be honest with you. Rick, go ahead.
I think as long as Captain and I are, everyone's comfortable with what they're doing, we could probably allow it. Yes.
Okay. All right. Well, we'll let you guys do your study, and I'll let Paul know that perhaps his little parking sign thing might work.
I'm not opposed to a soft hand approach at Green Pines. We've been kind of monitoring that on and off. So I'll have one of the guys go by and see what they can see if they can make a nice suggestion to some of these parents, as opposed to obviously if they decide they don't want to do it, then we're kind of hands tied there,
right?
Forcing something. So
right,
we can certainly talk to them.
All right, sounds good. Thanks, guys.
Okay, Joe.
All right. Do we need any further discussion on Green Pines? All right, let's move on to dumping on roadsides. What do we have on that?
All right, so just in this case, not too much tonight. Just wanted to make sure that we didn't keep the eye on the prize here. We currently have the city attorney looking into better defining the difference practically in. We talked about this briefly at the last meeting in December, but the difference between throwing out a candy wrapper on the highway and throwing out a whole bag of garbage, or potentially throwing out a white good, which would include things like dishwashers, microwaves, things along those lines. And the hope is that the city attorney will be bringing back to us a little bit more of a clear definition so we can isolate those two incidents. So one obviously would be a little bit worse of a crime than the other, and then have the associated penalty with it be recommended as well, what would be allowed. There is a certain limit. I think it's $750. It's the max. I would have to double check that, but I'm pretty sure that is the max that in the state of Missouri you could charge for that type of fine. So in this case, though, I believe right now it would be a lower fine if you throw out the same, if you throw out a piece of a candy wrapper and you throw out a whole bag of garbage, it's classified as the same thing. So the city attorney currently is looking to define that and then bring back some potential legislation that would change our code to help address that, and that would go through the Board of Public Safety. That is expected at the April meeting. Thank you.
All right, so why don't we do this on that one, unless anybody's opposed and wants to discuss this, let's move this to the next meeting. Because the trash service that Wildwood is contacted with will pick up white goods. So there's really no reason for our residents to dump white goods anywhere other than on their own driveway. Any discussion on that? All right, let's move on to the next item. So, new business. Do we have any items on new business? The agenda shows none. All right. I show no items on not ready for action. Nothing under other. Unless somebody has another item we need to address, I think we're ready for adjournment. Sorry, Vince, go ahead.
Just quickly, I wonder if Rick could give us an update on how the deer culling program is working and how the community is receiving it. I haven't heard much.
Well, thank you. Thomas probably would be love to give you an update. We were actually just talking about that we need to do that with the board.
Yeah,
Thomas, you want to give him a little quick one?
More than happy to, Rick. Actually, great news to, well, at least with the efficacy and also from what the perceived reception we've gotten from our residents too. So to date, we have culled a good number. So actually, let me give a little break on what we were trying to do. So originally it was up to 300. That is the permit that the Missouri Department of Conservation has issued us. We have a max number that we could cull this year at 300. So that was the major goal. We had over 27 properties that were willing to participate. And at this time, with still quite a few days left, we have about 4, I believe, days left on the actual schedule where they'll actually be culling, depending on the amount of deer they hit. But we've gotten 276 deer to date. So in this case, we're getting very close to our goal. Originally, we were going to need, we actually heard back today, we don't know for sure, but we were originally going to need to use Community Park as an asset in this place to help get to that number, to help supplement the houses that we had in the NE1 district. That being said, we reached out to our contact with White Buffalo, who's running the operation and point on the ground, and he let us know that it's seeming like we're getting closer to that number at 300, and we most likely won't need it. That being said, we've sent out letters, we've put out signage, so if they do need to use Community Park, it's fully ready to go. And Captain has been nice enough to be able to have officers ready to go on those nights too. But luckily, we haven't had to use it yet. We'll probably be looking to use Community Park in the subsequent years. But overall, I would say the project so far this year has been an absolute success. And we're really looking forward to diving into the data of what kind of deer we've got, you know, what was the average age, what was the actual difference we made in the density. A really cool thing to hear too, as well, is that, you know, it just shows that, you know, the number of deer we've gotten, it does show that we've got a problem if they're putting these kind of numbers together so quickly ahead of schedule. It's more than that they expected. So really good news to hear that they've been pretty efficient in their operations, and they're averaging, the last time I checked, it was on Tuesday, it was, I believe, around 13.5 deer per night when actually in operation. And they will be, just to kind of give a foreshadow for what's to come, they will be putting together a report. It should be around April when that will come in, and we'll be sure to provide copies to the board about the age, sex, characteristics of the actual deer themselves, and what, you know, they're kind of an overview of what they did. And then on top of that, the city has been already talking with White Buffalo. After this first year of program gets done, we would look to work with them on a kind of a deer management master plan for the city. So not only utilizing them for the first year and potentially for years to come, given the success, but also having an understanding of what statistics are we going to need to keep looking at, even when we get this under control, which it very well could take, you know, about 5 to 10 years to actually get the deer population where it needs to be. But I would say this has been a really great success on the front where residents have come in on what is the PR of this, I would say we've had a lot of success. We've had a couple residents that have called. It is hunting operations in more densely populated areas. That being said, my expectation, and Rick can provide info here as well, but my expectation was that we were going to get a large swath of calls just because it's new. White Buffalo has pretty much told us from the start here that the first year of the program is always going to be the toughest with residents just because they're not used to it. They might very well support the program in general, but they're just not used to the idea of having licensed hunters in the area in more densely populated areas. In this case, though, I would say the vast amount of individuals, we sent out letters and they had an opportunity. There's a QR code on there they could scan, fill out a form, and we'd contact them. The amount of submissions we've gotten on that has been pretty minimal. On top of that, there's probably only been 2 people that we've spoken to in the last 3 or 4 weeks since we've started calling that has called and said, had a complaint. And typically there is an inference that they are against the operation of culling deer in general. So that does carry a little bit of weight into it as well. But White Buffalo has been doing a really good job. Their methods are pretty solid. And at the end of the day, they've been very discreet as well. They've gotten in, gotten out, and all this meat has actually been given to a good cause. And not only that, we've helped out the St. Louis Zoo too. So at this time, I think it's looking very successful. More than happy to allow Rick to share any of his thoughts. But I would say the first year of the campaign has been a great opportunity to work with them, and it's been a pleasure. They're actually out there right now doing the work at this time. Thank you.
Yeah, White Buffalo has been a great organization to work with, frankly. Yeah, they've been very, very professional, very effective, and they know what they're doing, and that's been very helpful to the effort, no doubt about it. So we've learned a lot this first year. Thankfully, I think the numbers are where we were hoping they would be. So yeah, I think from our perspective, it's been a good success.
Thank you.
It's an excellent update. Anybody have any questions, commentaries, hands up? All right. Do we have any other items we wish to talk about?
Mr. Marshall?
Yes, sir, Mr. Brown.
I just was wanting to recognize Bree Kelton with us. If maybe you did that before I got on, I don't know, but Bree is going to be with us. She's back in Public Works as our administrative assistant, so we're happy she's back, and she'll be taking notes at your future meetings.
Thank you, sir. I talked to her for a couple minutes before we formally started, and I think she's a good addition to the team. So
she is.
Awesome.
We're all glad to have her back upstairs.
Thank you all. Happy to be here.
She did tell me that she wishes she'd get the heat fixed so she doesn't have to wear a sweater. No,
that is a fair assessment.
So just off agenda here, what's the timeline on the boiler?
Yep. So in this case, I had to make an emergency purchase last Friday. It came out. The problem occurred on Thursday of last week. The problem is this is an industrial size boiler, so it's something that you have to, first of all, move quick on, but they have to get it shipped. So in this case, we do have an update. The boiler went out on Thursday. They had to turn around a proposal. They got it to us on Friday. I declared an emergency purchase for it. It cost $38,000, so it wasn't a walk in the park on this one to replace it fully. But in this case, they plan to have it actually installed on Monday, which is good. It's going to beat the cold front that's coming in. Which is good. They had to get shipped out from Michigan, so it's been on a little bit of a long trek. But that being said, they are to kind of bridge the gap, because right now we have a boiler in City Hall that doesn't work. So there's no reason that we can't do the work that is going to be needed before the installation in order to get us prepped up. So we had them come out today. They had some other maintenance they needed to do on our HVAC system. That was part of our prepping for our general inspection. Tomorrow they're coming out to remove the boiler and pretty much get it's an automated system, so get that set up and get everything in place, so when it comes in, they're able to just pop right over and plug and play. So that's the goal, is to have it done by Monday. They did say that that is what the individual company that's shipping it has told them. So, hey, they said pretty sure Monday, but don't be surprised if it's Tuesday.
Well, I hope you
So
get I hope you get it all set up because the fire department would have a heart attack if you put in a bunch of space heaters. So,
Don't say anything.
all right, all right, people. Do we have any other items that we need to discuss? Hearing none, I will accept a motion for adjournment.
Motion to adjourn.
Vince, we got a motion for adjournment. Do I have a
I'll
second?
second. I'll second.
All right, Kevin, thank you. Instead of saying all in favor, I'm gonna say, is there anybody opposed? All right, team, good meeting. Thanks for the involvement. So.
Welcome, Chief Hafer.
Thank you.